Thank you for joining the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. We'll journey together through the process of finding, evaluating, and purchasing our first multifamily apartment. On this show, we'll also bring in industry experts to share valuable tips that will help us become billionaires together. Here's your host, Multifamily Martin.
Hey guys, today we have a very special guest with us by the name of Dan Noble. I met Dan at a few meetups here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I believe he has a lot to share with us today, in regards to raising money for our projects or multifamily purchases. Dan, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Well, sure. Over the years, I've done quite a few of these, and I'll tell you, Martin, I really appreciate the opportunity to reach out. There's nothing ever wrong with marketing and promotion. So
yeah,
good for you for doing it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and very happy to have you on our show today. Maybe just to get started, just kind of break the ice for our listeners. What's a fun fact about yourself? Something interesting about you that maybe we might not know?
Well, I guarantee you these are a couple of things that you don't know. I have a degree in psychology.
Wow.
I figured it was probably a good use of my time and energy to learn how to do the real estate and the mortgage business once I had the degree. And the funny thing about it is when I got out of San Jose State, spent about 2 weeks full-time looking for work. And so was everybody else. Yeah. So I decided to do this. Wow. The other thing that's kind of interesting is my favorite car ever, for all you car buffs out there,
I'm one of them.
1966 GTO.
Ooh.
389 with 3 deuces and a 411 rear end.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a lot of power, but also a lot of big gas guzzler, right? 3 carburetors.
Yeah, we didn't care so much about that back then. It was just a matter of all we had to pay for was our girlfriends, our work, and our cars, right?
Yeah, a lot simpler, right?
It was, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Dan, thank you for those fun facts.
Sure.
That was super interesting. Maybe let's tell our listeners, what you do and how you did it, and how you got to basically where you are today.
Okay. Well, it's been a long journey. I was first licensed, and I have my real estate license back in 1973. And like I said, I had just graduated from college. I spent 2 weeks full-time, 8 hours a day looking for a job because I figured that was my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied lots of different places. I had almost gotten a job in Santa Clara County as a social worker, but the funny thing about it was I didn't notice people everywhere I applied that were having fun with what they did.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I walked into a real estate office at the time, and I was told by my grandfather at some point I'd likely be doing real estate because all the smart people did that. And I don't know why I remembered that, but I did. And first thing I noticed when I went into the real estate company and talked to these people is they loved what they were doing. They had so much fun doing that.
Yeah.
I thought, boy, oh boy, this is a very different way to go, and I think this is for me.
Yeah.
So went back to school, spent 6 weeks, got my license, and inside of 6 weeks, month and a half, 2 months, I was one of the top producers in the company, but I had no idea. I had no clue what that meant. Yeah. I was just making a living doing something that I enjoyed.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. That's
how I got started. I did real estate for the first 10 years. And in 1982, I jumped over to the mortgage lending side.
Uh-huh.
And if you remember, well, you may not remember. I don't think you were there, but you young guys don't remember all this, but in early 80s, we were celebrating another very huge recession.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the oil crisis in mid 70s. And towards the end of the 70s, it's like somebody turned off the switch in real estate and there just was none to do.
Yeah.
So that was the perfect time for me, I thought, to change lanes. And I jumped over into mortgage financing.
Uh-huh.
I had 3 little kids to take care of at the time. And I just couldn't see how doing real estate was going to work for me to do 24/7, and you know it takes up all that time. So mortgage financing 5 days a week, 9 to 5, looked pretty good to me. That's what I did.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's great. Now I know that recently, or from what I've heard you speak up meetups, you talk a lot about raising private capital for deals. Can you shed a little bit of light on that process?
Sure. The funny part about it was I was pretty traditional A-paper lending.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, around about 2005 or so, I decided that I was going to form my own company and work with people across the country who wanted to buy real estate and get it financed and have it be cash flowing property.
Yeah.
And it was really fun doing that. But what I enjoyed most about it was all of the mechanics, all of the logistics of raising the money. So it occurred to me that there were lots of people with lots of money who might want to benefit from that instead of all those major lenders. So I just started doing that. And when I started it, there was an amazing amount of interest. And I just began developing a pretty good sized database. And to this day, it continues.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. And if you wouldn't mind sharing, how did you create your database? Like, I know that there's lists that you can buy of like, what is it called? Those investors that are like, I forget the certification. What's the name that they call? Like, you have to have over $1 million net worth or make accredited investors. I know you can buy lists of accredited investors, but I don't think that's the way that you did it. How did you find these investors to invest with you?
One of the keys, Martin, is this is a handshake, person-to-person, eyeball-to-eyeball business.
Yeah.
Which means you're not going to get somebody to part with $100, $200, $500, $1 million if they don't know who you are. What they'll turn their attention to is the quality of the project, and every investor will find something wrong with every project, guaranteed.
Yeah.
If they don't have a sense of comfort about who they're working with.
Yeah.
So what I did, one of the things I'm very good at is making sure I do what's needed to be done to take care of people.
Yeah.
And that is a business that you can only accomplish by meeting people face to face. So I've built my team, I've built my database through meetups that I go to.
Yeah.
I have done advertising for people, but even in the marketing and promotion that I do, I don't get any immediate business out of it unless I just happen to meet somebody, and this has happened a few times. They have the right amount of capital, they've been looking for something, they understand immediately what I'm talking about, and they plunk down the cash.
Yeah.
Then the opportunity really is in to make them a part of my database. And the way I do that is stay in touch with the people, give them updates, make sure they understand what's going on. And it doesn't by any means tell people that the project is going to succeed. There are projects that fail, and that has to do with the principals, how they manage the money, and in investment property, how they develop or build the property, etc. The best you can do as a person like myself is just to stay in communication with the people so they know what's going on and they know the moves to make if they don't like what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think, in the multifamily space, it's a lot easier to get, lending on, a single family home, maybe a duplex or up to a fourplex. But for
Yeah.
the people in the multifamily space, if you really want to scale, raising private capital, bringing in investors to take down some of these larger, 100, 200 apartment complex units is definitely a great skill to have. So as a newbie getting into this multifamily space, trying to raise money, when I'm networking with people, are there any red flags that, I should look out for when speaking to people, trying to raise money from them? Anything that I should be aware of?
Yes, there's a lot of things to be aware of. I'd say from all of the deals that I've done over the years, a couple of things I can really point to that make a difference for somebody getting started. One, of course, is you want to maintain the personal relationship, like I just said.
Yeah.
But beyond that, things that'll blow a deal up, like no kidding, is too high a leverage. There's been a lot of people focusing on 100% financing right now, because if you can leverage the whole entire deal, if you make a profit, your profit is extremely large on the return on investment side because you really didn't have anything in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that also is a circumstance that really causes a lot of trouble in all other places, all other pieces of that transaction.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to work with somebody who has a down payment. And second of all, when you do that leverage, you have to make sure that the people who are in it have some degree of understanding what they're getting into. So, for example, I have put people who are youngsters in lending, they don't really know what they're doing, but they've got some extra money, and I sound like I know what I'm doing, so they say, yeah, let's do this. But it's my job to make sure that they understand what they're doing and what the risks are. So we do have a come to Jesus meeting in the beginning that lets people know what they're getting into and that the risk is theirs, not mine.
Yeah.
And they have to be willing to take that on. So if you don't have the skill, if you don't have the experience, and you don't know what you're getting people into, you don't have any business doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point.
Yeah. See, there's too many people that are getting burned by this.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely want to be very careful in this business and, learn as much as you can to try to hedge your risk. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How would our listeners find someone like you to partner with? Someone that can, be on their team and raise money for them? Because I know that, trying to do this by yourself, if you know nothing about either real estate or you don't know any high net worth individuals, how would people find someone like you who has the experience, to work with to help them raise money for their real estate investment?
The best thing to do is referral.
Mm-hmm.
You ask somebody who is related, who understands, know what your criteria are, and you ask for referrals. Almost all the business I get from new clients are as a result of people that I've worked with, and that goes for deals as well as the clients.
Yeah.
And it is just a matter of making sure that you know what you're looking for and you ask the right questions, and you'll get referrals. And then you need to make sure the person that you're working with can actually take care of you. And you as a person with money have to be proactive about that.
Yeah. Wow. Great.
Yeah.
What do you look for in someone? What do you look for in someone who you're trying to raise money from? Do you only go after accredited investors, or would you target someone like me who might have a little bit of money to invest but not sure what to do with it?
Well, I like accredited investors, but it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other to me. With accredited investors, the real advantage is my risk is a little bit lower because they understand what they're doing a lot better, and ultimately that's it.
Yeah.
In the single family space, you brought up this versus commercial projects earlier. In the single family space, it's not very well known, but if you want to get into the business and you want to do this and you want to put people's money to work, if you are not on title in the project itself, Securities and Exchange Commission has regulations about trying to arrange financing for anybody. Basically, you cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a real estate license, if you are doing single family residences, Department of Real Estate specifically says unless it's your project, which means you're a part of it, you cannot do that. You need to have the license that was created around 2009, 2010, which is NMLS.
Mm-hmm.
That's now a mortgage lending license, and that has to be renewed every year. There are lots of requirements about that. You must be a part of somebody who's a broker doing that. And bottom line, it's a lot of trouble to go through to be able to do this business.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it. I don't have one.
Yeah.
So whenever I do lending on a property, I always have to be part of the contract. Like if it's an LLC that's buying the property, or if they're buying the property themselves as owners, I have to have an ownership interest if I'm going to arrange financing for that project.
Yeah.
Other than that, it doesn't work. It's easy to get in trouble.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, what is the range of interest that you typically ask for in these type of deals where you're helping put the deal together?
Well, Martin, I get that question a lot, but it's not determined by me. I'll start talking to people between 10 and 12%.
Yeah.
Sometimes we start lower, around 8%, because there are people out there who like that range. But that conversation is had first with the person who's looking for the money. You fundamentally find out from them what they'll pay.
Yeah.
Because almost always they have a limit. I've done them I've done them like huge interest rates when you look at interest rates specifically. I just did a deal where a guy borrowed $200,000 for 3 months, and he's going to get paid $20,000 at the end of that 3 months, on top of get his money back.
Yeah.
So 200,000 in, 220,000 out. Look at the return of that.
That's pretty good.
That is a 30% return.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Wow.
So, it's a big return, but sometimes you get people who can pay that.
Yeah.
And so it really is matching the person who wants the money with the person who has the money. And another thing I tell the investors who fund those big deals like that, don't get attached to that kind of yield, because it's unusual in the marketplace. It doesn't always happen.
Yeah, that's pretty unheard of, 30%. Yeah, I've heard,
And that's when it's really important to know somebody like me, because I get those opportunities and people have to perform quickly. I'll get it like that one. I got it on a Wednesday and it was funded on Friday.
Wow, that's quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, they made out, made out 30.
Well, they will if the project closes. It's supposed to close January 15th.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, hopefully if it all works out for your investor, I think they'll be super happy with that.
Yep, they usually do.
Yeah, that's great. Once a deal is funded, what do investors like to see, and how do you communicate with the investors that invested in the deal?
Well, that's a big piece, and that is something that many people who do what I do don't do very well.
Yeah.
Because really, once the deal is funded, the person who is arranging the funding, they don't make any money from that point forward. they only make points with their investors and their private money lenders, which is where the juice in the relationship is.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is I make sure people know what they're doing. That's number one. Number two, they've got all the documentation that they need, and they will understand what they've got. And then over time, we talk about the project and how it's doing. And I usually put my private money lenders in direct communication with the principal, because I think it's important that they learn to work together. Now, I have to manage that relationship, because a lot of times what will happen is they'll develop such a relationship that they start wanting to do business again and again and again. And for people who are thinking about getting into this, you again have to have a good relationship with the people you're working with, because they will, for lack of a better term, go around you. And it's really not going around you. It's for them to develop relationships, and you have the conversations immediately when the relationship begins about how it works for this one and future deals.
Yeah.
And the result is sometimes you get mailbox money.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, are you providing like weekly or monthly reports to the investors at all on how the the project is going?
Well, again, it really depends on what the investor who owns the project produces.
Yeah.
Most of them don't produce reports. They will send some sort of an email, usually every month or sometimes every quarter. And it's just setting people up so that they know what to expect, and that's all.
Yeah. Setting expectations up front before the deal. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Are there any other words of wisdom that you'd like to share for a newbie trying to get into this business of raising capital for their multifamily apartment?
Well, there are one of the biggest ways, and this is a kind of long process, is syndication. So you, as an investor, are going to buy a property, you want to get it financed. So what you do is you set it up immediately with somebody like a registered investment advisor. That's not me, but there are people who do that. It's a technical license. It's an SEC license, an RIA.
Yeah.
And what you're looking for is somebody to put together, either with an attorney or the fiduciary, you put together a private placement memorandum. And there are rules that SEC has about how to promote that and who can see it, and how you pass that out. But I'll tell you, the ones that I've seen done best are somebody who goes through the rigorous process of putting together all the paperwork. They do a executive summary of the project itself. It has all the numbers, their expected performance, who the players are. The property is open to be seen by anybody who wants to see it, who wants to be an investor in it. And then they put together the whole presentation. If you really want to be effective and do this, you do it through the promotion in marketing events, like a webinar, for example. Or if you want to go all out, you do a meeting where you'll have, an afternoon or evening session at a hotel, for example.
Yeah.
And do the promotion. You invite a lot of people who are potential investors who can fund that project. And there are several people that have developed this, and they do very well with that.
Wow.
So it's all the way from put together what you can and phone calls back and forth until you get it done, to go in the full 9 yards, put it all together, do a session, do marketing, invite the people, and that grows your database pretty fast too.
Yeah. Wow, that's smart. Yeah, I've never heard of, actually putting together an event at a hotel, kind of like a meetup, and presenting investors with the project details. That's pretty good.
It wouldn't be a meetup. It would be more like any event that you would go to at an evening session. I mean, some meetups are kind of like that, but meetups are a little too low key for that.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Wow, awesome. If listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Well, there's two ways. One, you can contact me via email, and I can be reached at dnoble@Satori Alliance. That's S as in Sam, A-T as in Tom, O-R-I, alliance.com. Or you can reach out to me on the phone, and I'm one of the few remaining people that still has a landline that I use every day.
Great.
And that number is 408-268-9777.
Wow, awesome. And I'll put all of your contact information in our show notes as well for our listeners to reference.
I also have a cell phone, of course, like everybody else on the planet, and you can text me at that number. And that's a good form of introduction.
Yeah.
I don't usually conduct as much business on a cell phone as everybody else does.
Yeah.
I do some, but I'm kind of old school. I sit in front of a computer, very much like what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I do my work here at home all day. So that cell number is 408-313-8553.
That's awesome. Great. And one question actually that I didn't bring up earlier. What is one of your favorite books? Real estate or non-real estate related?
Well, I've read an awful lot, but let me tell you, you've asked a lot of questions about starting your own business and being somebody new at this. What do you do with money? Blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you, get a book called You Are a Badass.
That's a funny title.
And her name is Jen Sincero.
Okay.
Let me show it to you.
Oh, cool.
Got a second. Right here.
Oh, I've seen that before. Yeah, I've seen that cover before.
Yep.
That's awesome.
It's very easy reading. It's real light. It's easy to get what she's talking about. She's a you and me kind of gal.
Yeah.
And yet she has an extremely profitable and successful coaching business.
Oh, wow.
So very worthwhile. Do that. I mean, there are lots of other books that you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, it would take me forever. It depends on which decade you want to talk about.
Well, you're my idol. Yeah, I've just recently, gotten into, reading a lot of, or setting aside the time to read a lot of books. And it's been pretty amazing. But yeah, maybe one day, maybe offline, I'll have to pick your brain on what other books you'd recommend.
Yeah. Well, it really is just a matter of staying in touch. If there's something about reading a book, and I'll do an awful lot of audio books too.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I use my phone for, and I do earplugs and I walk and I get exercise and listen to books at the same time. So that's a good way to do it. But if you spend the time to take notes and record your thoughts, you get an awful lot out of the relationship you have with the book.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay. Those are some good tips. Awesome. Well, hey, Dan, once again, I want to thank you for joining the podcast today and really sharing some of your knowledge in regards to raising private capital. I hope our listeners get a lot from, what you've shared. And just want to thank you again. And hope you have an awesome day.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Martin. I do appreciate being a part of it. And I'd love to be able to do some business with you and your listeners.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, and there's the first call right now. Here they come.
All right. Awesome. All right, Dan, I'll let you go. Take care.
All right, good. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. If you liked what you heard, please help by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to make a comment in the comment section. Let's become billionaires together.